This past Valentine's Day, it was a beautiful spring Florida afternoon, and I had the opportunity to share a meal with a gentleman living in the woods. I'll call him Z. It was so enjoyable in the afternoon sun, being partially shaded by the trees, that I hadn't realized until later that not all days were as heavenly living outdoors. I learned that day that Z's thirst to know God was moving. Today, Z lies in a hospital bed, dying of throat cancer. Z will remain in the hospital taking in chemotherapy because there isn't a place to go home to. In this country, being without a home dates back. During the Great Depression, makeshift camps outside of town, called Hoovervilles during President Hoover's unpopular time in office, where unemployed workers would go, and they were branded in effect. Not to be confused with Whovilles. It wasn't anywhere near as pleasant as Dr. Seuss land here. Over the decades, administrations have budgeted for some of the millions living in poverty. 37 million today. That's the size of Canada. I'm not going to try to persuade you to take legal action or to promote more programs or even amend laws preventing panhandling, loitering, or feeding those without homes in public places. The ACLU already advocates as such, quoting, "Begging is not a crime." Asking the question individually, how can we become effective and supportive on this complex road of despair? Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth and judge righteously. Defend the rights of the poor and needy. Proverbs 31:8-9. After World War I, shanty camps or the Hoovervilles popped up by the Anacostia River in D.C. The disabled vets demanded their promised disability, which was refused by President Hoover, who then sent in General MacArthur and removed these unemployed veterans at force. Today, 57,000 Vietnam vets have post-traumatic stress disorder. On poverty, a family of 3 making 16,000 is in poverty. A family of 4, 19,000. 5 million people in America make half of this amount. 1 in 5 children living in poverty, that's 12 million children in poverty. That's the population of Greece. This is what we call generational circumstances. Poverty that perpetuates itself. Lack of nutrition, stability, emotional support makes it difficult for a child to reach full potential. Full potential is achieved with support. Without resources or a safety net, teenagers find themselves without a safe haven, possibly turning to self-medication. Others lose their way, for example. Those who suffer from personality disorders or the complicated mind of a schizophrenic, being in a state of disillusion and paranoia hinders them from seeking outreach programs. 750,000 people are without shelter. That's the entire city of Jacksonville. Some find themselves without homes temporarily, and some are chronic. According to Housing Urban Development, HUD as we know it, 1 year or more, or 4 times in 3 years, is chronic homeless. A temporary situation, for example, is in the 4 years in the aftermath of the economic crisis in 2008, where 20% more people found themselves without a home. For decades, programs have been in place, revamped, funded, and have been successful. The one element that could be missing is personal compassion. Not to take away from the homeless abolitionists who make it their life's work, the ACLU fights for those living in public places, panhandling, and loitering. And across the nation, there are many triumphs in support. Current administration has a Housing First administration developed from a successful model in New York. 36,000 units of supportive housing for the mentally ill have been established. And in a study, each unit with available counseling and employment services will only cost around $1,000 compared to the $40,000 it might cost factoring in public service, arrests, and jail time for those not housed. One person touching another life can help them on the road to self-reliance. A few years back, my son asked me what a hobo was, And I found out that a popular TV station for kids, filmed about 50 miles west of here, was using the hobo character for comic relief. It saddened me because I realized that this was desensitizing our children to the situation. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, Matthew 5:3. If we put homeless in a box and allow the government or faithful organizations to handle the burden, we cannot in good conscience have anything to say about it. One paycheck missed, either from sickness or lack of child care, can spin a spiral effect into motion for a single parent. Minimum wage puts a family of 3 at poverty level. Ending up without a home can happen to anyone. There is a misconception of people at risk, quoted from a Caucasian woman who grew up in a middle-class home and she found herself homeless. 150,000 vets from the War on Terror are receiving disability for post-traumatic stress disorder. In the event a disabled vet loses their way through substance abuse or prescribed pain medication, lack of support, this adds to the 24 million living veterans that we can only pray the systems in place will not fail them. One legally blind Vietnam veteran tells of his path to homelessness due to his $512 disability check he gets a month. Many without homes do not blame anyone but themselves for their plight. You may ask yourself, how can I help? Will I really make a difference? As you can see, there are plenty of opportunities in Florida, as we are the top 4 in the nation at 8.9% with those without shelter. So I ask of you, treat those around you in fairness, a prayer, or even a smile. There will always be those in need. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed toward your brothers and toward the poor and needy in your land. Deuteronomy 15:11. Do not turn a blind eye. I urge you to consider the realistic contributions. If you are empathetic, remember it's quality, not quantity. Scripture tells us to come to those in need, virtuously extending a hand to the poor, reaching out to the needy. Proverbs 31:20. The effort made to just one individual at a time can make a difference. If you're more of a giver, I suggest keep packages of fresh socks or undergarments in the trunk of your car. When you run into somebody in need, bless them with these overlooked creature comforts. Blankets and a clean pillow can go a long way too. If you're more of a doer, there will always be shelters and kitchens that you can offer a helping hand. And finally, if you're more of a healer, most effectively show compassion and ask to pray. Kind word and thoughtful prayer can save someone's life and the direction it takes. Jesus said, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would not have told you. I go and prepare a place for you. John 14:1-2. Thank you very much.
Thank you.